Meeting chat, got that. Hang on a second. Hello, everybody. We got guys starting to come in here. Jason, good to see ya. Got Ron on. Mark, Dennis is coming through. Chad. Guys, you're totally cool if you want to leave your cameras off. If you've got your mics muted, that is great too. We'll definitely open this up for questions so you can turn your cameras and mics on in there and you can put anything into the chat as well. I am just looking main chat, bingo. Okay, let me let everybody in on this.
You're the only one who can see the chat, isn't it?
You should be able to see the chat now. I just opened up the chat to everybody.
Okay. Is that down on the right
So
or
let me test. At the
right
bottom
there?
of your screen, there
I
should.
got it. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, guys, let's get started. I've got 4:01. We want to value Mr. Speaker's time here because he's got football practice to pick up his kids, which we got to see how the team is doing this season and make sure those kids get home on time and fed, right?
0-1 is the answer.
Okay, hey, you can't fall off the floor. You can go up from there. I like it. George, good to see you. We got to put some books on those shelves.
I have
All right, guys.
20 boxes waiting, so
Just put your Iron Man medal up there. That'll be good enough, okay? We'll get one for every shelf. All right, guys, I'm going to get us going here, kick it all off. Today, I am joined by Ron Speaker, my good friend, Ron Speaker, better known as the financial consigliere. Did I pronounce that correctly?
I think you did. Yeah.
Okay, I haven't seen enough of The Godfather, but I think that's close in there. Ron's got an incredible story. It's the kind of Wall Street journey that you don't hear every day. Starting in the mailroom, working his way up to securities analyst, portfolio manager, and ultimately managing several $billion of fixed income funds inside one of the most renowned equity houses. Over a 21-year career, Ron has had the privilege of learning directly from some of the most legendary figures in the business. I was first introduced to Ron through our mutual friend, Michael Umansky, and he was gracious enough to invite me out to Aspen, hosted a fireside chat and dinner for his clients around the release of my book. We became really fast friends, and since then, Ron has contributed dozens of thoughtful and impactful articles to Midlife Mail, for which I am grateful, and so should everybody who has read them. When I think of men who embody relatability, credibility, and aspiration all at once, Ron, you are at the top of that list. After leaving Janus, Ron launched his own investment firm, serving ultra-high net worth families for 15 years. And today he administers a private family foundation for one of his late mentors, a role that allows him to combine gratitude, legacy, and financial acumen. Perhaps most importantly, he's paying it forward by running the Finance Camp for teenagers, teaching the power of compound investing early in life. We are going to dig into topics every family and midlife male should be thinking about, including the power of 529s and Roth IRAs and the Ryan Reynolds story that motivated Ron to start them for his own boys, why the compounding magic of a 15-year-old investor looks radically different than at 35, 45, and 55, understanding your investing personality across stocks, ETFs, and venture capital, estate planning, why it may be the best money you'll ever spend, and investing in companies you know and believe in, along with how to simplify and organize finances for aging parents. Here comes a conversation about wisdom, discipline, and legacy, and I can't think of anyone better to learn from than Ron Speaker. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you very much. That's warm welcome.
Hey, look, you're the most humble person I know, so somebody's got to write this shit for you. When it's about, you can write about all the other stuff you know, and you do that generously and graciously. About yourself, that seems to be tougher, right?
Yeah. I've been really lucky to be around great men, and that's why I resonate so much with what you're doing and the decisions that all of us have to make, and point our life in the right direction. And I may be interested in how many of your listeners today have kids, because this is intertwined conversation of how we manage our own affairs as well as set up our family.
Sure thing. So, guys, if you're here and you want to throw that stuff in the chat right now, as well as questions, we will get to all of it. Um, this is timely right now. I want to start because I just dropped both of my boys off at college. One is a senior, one who's now a freshman. They're both out of state. Okay, it's expensive, as we know, all of that. The power of 529s, Roth IRAs. Tell me, share this Ryan Reynolds story, and we'll work our way into the actual 529s as well.
Well, so of course we started the 529s and we were contributing. And as each midlife male may know, when their wife grabs your phone, you're a little bit nervous of what could be on there from your buddy. And she was looking for a photo, and I had saved a video that a financial advisor had done of Ryan Reynolds and his wife Blake Lively. And it says, they're playing chess, the rest of us are playing checkers, because they're hiring their kids and their businesses and putting 7,000, I think it goes up to 8,000 this year, into their Roth IRAs. And because of those early contributions, they're each going to be worth over $10 million when it comes retirement. And of course, my wife Lisa just says, well, why aren't we doing that? So I said, all right, let's do it. So we formed LLCs for our children. And then I started a youth program called YES, Youth Entrepreneurial Zone. And I basically kidnapped their hockey team to have a few attendees. And each of these young kids are 12-year-olds. Yeah, we're selling cotton candy, popcorn, Christmas ornaments, custom hats. And they made, $100 or $200 on a First Friday celebration. So then we're able to put that money specifically into a Roth IRA. And the reason I just think these are all important is that if you can get kids starting early, then hopefully they view that money as their retirement and it doesn't get spent. And as parents, we can make them a deal like, hey, we'll match it. But from an IRS standpoint, you do have to have a little tracker on where it was actual earned income. You can't give it to them. It can't be because of their chores. It has to be some little trailer on it. So here's a great way that we could get into compounding. A 15-year-old kid with 50 years of compounding basically can turn their money 74x, 74 times their initial investment with no other contributions. My kids were 11 at the time, and they said, hey, Dad, well, we're not 15, we're 11. What is 54 years? And then I went to do the math, and it's over 100. So to pick up 26 times multiple more in just those 4 years, it really is just mind blowing. So the early start for all of us, your kids, is just such a significant thing. It literally takes $13 a month to make your child a millionaire if you start at zero, where it's $76 a month if you're 15. So the numbers are really, unless you run the math, it's just mind blowing. So it's one of the key concepts that we're trying to teach kids through the finance campus. An early start makes the biggest difference.
So let me backtrack a little bit. I know you're trying to teach it to kids at the earliest stage, but what about teaching it to guys in middle age who do not have the financial, I guess, background, the education? I didn't grow up getting a financial education from my family there. And because of that, I've had to be a slow learner, a late bloomer, learn later, start later, all of those other things. So where do the grown-ups start, if you will? Like if you've got kids now, young or at any age, and you go, hey, I'm behind now, but what can I do, or what should I do?
Let me try and frame it. It might help your audience understand. So I come from a financially fearful conditioning background. My grandfather won a jingle for the Serta Mattress Company in 1931. He won $300. They were living in Washington, D.C. He was the captain of the dining car, and my family lost their entire savings, $1,200, in a failed Essence Savings and Loan basic crisis in Washington, D.C. And my father had this memory of holding his father's hand for hours, waiting in line, holding his finger because he was only 4 years old. Yeah. And so he was never an investor. Okay. He was a great saver, and he invested in CDs. And sadly, when inflation was 15, he was earning 12, moving money around these little banks. So I had to heal myself of all of this pressure to be conservative and that risk is too much. You don't jeopardize your future. So I was lucky to get a start at 20 is when I started at Janus Capital, but we can all get started like planting the tree today. So I would say, here's the start. If you don't already have your brokerage account or your IRA, you got to open that account. You can do it in 15 minutes. You don't have any, it's not a custodial account. And you got to get money flowing into those accounts. And then this topic that's just really been burning on me, because please let your audience know I'm speaking from all the mistakes I made and all the missed opportunities that I made that were standing right in front of me. And I got lucky to be at the right spot at the right time and basically have some guys help me make a decision that had me take an enormous risk with leverage that worked out. But I mean, I saw Bitcoin as a professional money manager come on the scene. And I saw every company that's significant today. Like I even was buying NVIDIA chips for computers we were making in my company Equus. And I've owned it a couple different times. And I just have had to force myself into the game of investing and taking risk. So then here's what will help. If you're 30, 40, or 50, there will be episodes of complete disaster, of just shock and awe. So whether it's COVID or the financial crisis or the NASDAQ bubble, I've been through every one of those, from 9/11 to the crash of 87. And out of all of those, I keep coming up with, why didn't I be more aggressive thinking this was an opportunity? Because I was playing the long game. So start by getting a reference point. If you're 30, you got 50 years left of being an investor plus. If you're 40 and 50, you have a shorter time horizon, but you will get tested. And how you behave in that test is what may help you parlay to a higher level. So we all got to have some cash available. NVIDIA's just announced their earnings 12 or 15 minutes ago. The stock's down a little bit. Had it been a total shit show, now there could have been an opportunity. Or in 2 months from now, something really bad could happen, and it will. And each of those episodes is an opportunity to get further invested in great companies, not all speculative instruments, but great companies. And we'll get to invest in companies that later. So yeah, you got to get in the game. If you need more education, The Psychology of Money is one of my favorite books out there from Morgan Housel. Peter Lynch wrote great books. And I have had to teach myself how to take risk. And so, you could gamble on the NFL or buy lottery tickets, or have a more of a disciplined, planned approach to investing, and understand who we are, because I'm not a day trader. I'm not a real estate developer. I'm a bond manager turned into stock picker to try and teach kids. And we have to stick and maybe expand our subset of knowledge, but not try and go too far outside of our realm. So let's figure out who we are. And some people are great gamblers, and I really admire them.
Let me ask to that about taking risk and about learning how to take risk. Do you have a particular thesis or framework around how you determine how much risk to take, i.e., that could be proportionate, in there? If you make X amount of dollars, or if you have X amount of dollars available in the market, or so on and so forth in there, how you frame kind of around how much risk to take, both like what you're comfortable with, but also maybe even statistically, like even around home buying, can I afford $1 million house? Well, if you could put 20% down and do this, there are kind of metrics around it. I wonder how you think around kind of metrics of risk taking and investing.
Yeah, interesting, because we were talking earlier this week about, how much homes have appreciated in certain parts of the country. Yeah, one of my mentors, like, Ron, you treat real estate as a expense, not an investment. He's like, you just buy what you can afford. Right? Now that's pretty conservative. I'm speaking to you from Aspen today, and Aspen market has been a 100 times your money in the last 40 years. But stocks have done a hell of a lot better. And I gave Greg a chart that you might display later on. So on the real estate side, I don't want to be over my skis. I want to sleep well at night. I want to put a roof over my family's head. And I'm not trying to flip houses. That's not my skill of cheap construction and advertising. In the market, here's something that may help. Yeah, scalability is the key. So there's a book called The Zurich Axioms that's worth reading someday, and it's kind of like, two people, they each have $100. One person doubles it, they think they're rich, but it really didn't matter. It's like kissing your sister. So these are the secret of the Swiss bankers, that you should always have a speculation going on, and that you should always have a significant one that makes you a bit nervous, because then it really motivates you to do the work. Yeah, a great one was, people don't really know what they own. And so good analysts do the work to say, hey, here's my liquidation value, land value. You know, if you have a basis, you can build conviction. And then I had a rule called the rule of halves. And the rule of halves says, if I'm thinking about something, if I'm a little bit motivated to do it, then I do half. Because if I did half and I was right, I'd be glad I did half. And if I did half and I was wrong, I'll be glad I only did half. Okay.
Mm.
But it keeps me in motion versus on the sidelines waiting for that very specific moment. So I had a nickname at Janus called the Nibbler, that I was always kind of testing the market, because, when things are a little too easy to buy, you can kind of guess the direction. And when things are really hard to buy, you know that there's more appetite for it out there. So if I'm buying a stock, I mean, I literally, when I make my first purchase, I hope it goes down so that I can make a follow-on purchase at a cheaper price. The worst thing in the world is to take a starter position, have it go up 50% in, 2 weeks, or because of an earnings report, and then not follow on a solid idea. So it's up to us all, but I would never be betting the house. And if we're married and with kids, there are limits to how much you can really speculate, because investing is just, a higher form of gambling with a long leash, a long lead time.
Mm. So what do you think about what's it low risk, if you will? Low risk or even medium risk, meaning, hey, okay, maybe we have a lower tolerance for risk in there. And you start thinking about whether it's a lack of sophistication, even a lack of interest in there, more of a set it and forget it, or you mentioned taking a long-term approach, in there, whether that's S&P 500 funds, like where are you on that?
Well, as I'd say, my father, he was never one to take a lot of risk, and he was let's say, bond buyer. He was buying certificates of deposit. Yeah, and there's this old rule of 100 minus your age is how much you should have in common stocks. So, if you're 10, 90%. Yeah. So let's say there's bond investors, and I own a lot of municipal bonds. I think that tax exemption's been proven. And yeah, it's certainly a 5% tax exempt bond feels like 8 to me in Colorado. And if it was California and New York, it's going to be a little bit more. Yeah. I'm just fine with people being very conservative, because that's their plan, right? They're not losing sleep over their plan. So you ease yourself into it over time. You say, am I 100% bonds? Well, if you're 30 or 40 years old, that's not going to compound your wealth at 9 and 10%. So, two pathways, and Morgan's book on psychology of money is that you could be a diversified index investor and be just fine. So if you don't want to follow individual stocks and do research, yeah, it's a perfect strategy. You might decide to put a little into technology or more into energy, or the Russell versus the S&P. That's fine. Over the long haul, that's 9% plus. That compounds your money quite nicely. But I want to have some shots on goal, right? So you could do 90% of that and say 10%, I'm gonna have a few stocks. And if one of those was to work out, which, this, the chart's up there, and you just got to see this,
Yeah,
because I
put it
was
in the chat.
one
Mhm.
of my friends. These are multiples of your money. So if you look at the bottom left, if everybody can expand it a little bit, that's 100 times your money on Aspen Real Estate. This is my friend's house, Bill, that he bought for 160,000. That's worth $16 million today. This is one of the greatest real estate markets in the country, if not the world, through there. But yet, look how Tesla since 2010, and Amazon and Apple, Apple is 1,730 times your money, you know, 2x is a double. So this is unbelievable. So if 10,000 turns into $17 million, okay? I had the first iPhone 7 or iPhone in 2007, And I wasn't smart enough to load up more on the stock. First one, meaning in my small town, I had driven it up from Denver. Yeah. So I have been a consumer of so many products. And when Lululemon was going on its run, my wife was dragging me to stores, and I didn't buy the stock that I could sense the demand. But the one that's just shocking is Home Depot. Home Depot is up 11,000% since 1981. And we all knew it. We all went there. So that's 10,000 turns into 113 million. And I thought this, I didn't trust the data, but I was with a friend of mine I used to work with, and we were sharing notes, and he's like, yeah, Ron. So these are stocks that split, that you could say someone left in the vault, but they just were good companies, profitable companies with great balance sheets over long periods of time. And here was his comment. He's like, no company will ever become a significant market leader without a lot of people as their customers. There's going to be very few that we are hard to understand and that they're more business to business. But most of the richest people in the world are selling to customers, retails. So,
Mm.
Obviously the Mag 7 have worked out great, but there's so many more. But, how dare I not own more Amazon when the packages were rolling into my house all those years ago? I mean, it was just so blatantly obvious. So I get off the soapbox just to say my MO, I don't want to miss the next one. I don't want my kids to miss the next one. I want them to take some shots on goal, and they need money to do it.
Mm.
Because these are transformational life changes.
Jason had a question about your take on Bitcoin. You mentioned you had seen it early, when you were there. Not in terms of speculation as to where it's headed in price, but does he believe it's a viable long-term hedge against currency devaluation?
You know, in the finance camp I've had three people speak about Bitcoin. One was the chairman of BitZero that I had met in Miami, Greg, at the Fina Hotel bar. Incredible guy named Akbar Shamji. And he gave a speech to our young students about the history of money from the Knights Templar to single ledger accounting to double ledger accounting to triple ledger accounting. It put it all in this context. Now, my takeaway from each of these three instructors, Adam Blumberg as a digital crypto advisory firm in Denver, is it needs to be a portion of my portfolio because, Greg, I bet you make some decisions like this. I don't want to have any regret, right? I
Yep.
don't have to be right, but I don't want to be wrong. So part of my answer on crypto and Bitcoin, number one, I own some Ether, is I'm going to own some because if it does turn into $1 million a coin, I'm not going to complain, right? Now, my cost is over 3 years old, and I had a unique experience in New York through a limo driver that got me into Bitcoin a few years back. But each of us has some Bitcoin maxi friend in our town, and it's worth listening to their, zealousness about it. I love the fact there's limited supply. Um, I wrote that article about the other meme coins, which are supposed to be entertaining and always are, but
Mhm.
people can't resist. So let's maybe frame this up, go to the higher end. You know what? Greg, we live in a world where people like to speculate, whether it's on houses, games, stocks, crypto, it's just who we are. People in China love to gamble. Okay. It ain't going away, right? And so when there's a dip in these assets or stocks, there will be so many people involved. And about all this money that's sitting on the sidelines in money market funds that's scared to get in, that's slowly getting FOMO'd into the market, and this enormous transfer of wealth that's happening to the younger generation who are going to be Robinhood subscribers or those type of platforms versus the Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab's. Um, this is just part of our society. So there'll be assets that inflate. If any subscribers want to get some real history, one of the first books I was forced to read at 20 years old was The Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. And it's about witch hunts and South Sea bubbles and tulip bulb crazes. It's been going on a long time. It's going to continue to go on. So I'm going to own some digital. I'm going to own some crypto. Yeah, I hate the deficit. I hate this, the Fed's cooked this whole story that won't go away. My God, it's just a distraction for the real stuff that's going on in the economy.
In what regard?
Innovation, I mean, I'm trying to finish this presentation on teens, like what their future is going to look like. And I was even thinking of you, Greg, because you wear the glasses, you wear the Ray-Ban looking glasses at times. So Uncle Zuck has got this new glass coming out, the Hype. Have you heard about this? Hypernova?
I have not.
It's going to have a little screen in it. Okay. So let's just think, is the robo taxi going to work? Sure it is, right? Are we going to have a robot? My neighbor's got a robot that mows his yard right now, a little bot that he just programs. Are we going to have robots in the house and in the factories and all that? Yep, it's going to happen. Incredible breakthroughs in longevity. Yep. I was thinking of your audience, men, hair, erectile dysfunction, all these great improvements that are going to be in our lives. It's going to be so exciting. So, I want to be involved. I want to be in some of these new companies that are formed through there. And people are going to, the public markets is the vehicle. We are so fortunate. Add in this whole new concept of tokenization. I don't know everything about it, but it's coming. And that's where Robinhood's got a lead. And, every asset's basically like the old the NFT stuff. They're going to tokenize. Could happen to real estate, and you'll be able to trade 24/7. Think of that. Market's closed. You and I could trade crypto right now. So they just can't prevent this, engine from going further. The steamroller's happening.
So let's say you're not, now everything you're saying, listen, and go, okay, here's a guy with a lot of wisdom, a lot of experience who still is keeping his finger on the pulse of everything that's out there and ideally speculating to an extent on what's coming down the pipe. Certain things are more obvious than others in there, and how you make risk. For those of us, again, who do not spend our days doing this, and again, struggle with even maybe where to start or how to pick, or what should we be looking for either in an advisor, or in a way to educate ourselves, or a certain comfort level if we do want to open up our own account versus going with somebody and paying fee? Like, how do we make some of those decisions?
But I would say do both because obviously, you know, some people are such high performers and doctors and lawyers that just don't have time. Have an advisor have your back, but I think everybody needs their own account, including our wives, because if we leave early and we didn't teach our wives, if they're not in the business to know how to manage money and how to think about this, then it's our fault. I think Jim Cramer has been so helpful to so many people, and I'm really going to be sad when he's gone. Someday it'll happen, but what a instructive show that is. Um, there's a lot of people on Instagram, and you have to be careful who you're listening to, or you get sucked into one of their programs. Um, the mutual fund world has really changed, and now the ETFs is the best solution, especially from a tax standpoint of not having to get hit with the big capital gains that a mutual fund can give you. But I look at what everyone owns, and then I think for myself. So if you look at some of the best performing mutual funds, you get some interesting ideas, and you got to uncover some rocks. Like I said in that last article about my ode to Michael, yeah, we all have something that crosses our path. What we do about it is the difference of whether we took action or someone else gets it. So um, just encourage this. Each of us look into our own budgets and ask ourselves where we spend money. Look at the companies, the public companies, of where we spend money. And I would recommend this tool. I'm not a seller promoter of anything, but I've struggled with this with my wife, who's a great shopper, that Monarch Money, hell, I said that kindly. She might see the YouTube. Yeah, it categorized things automatically. So AI is now your friend. And, there were so many QuickBooks or you need a budget, but start there and just look at, where you spend money. So, airlines are expensive, but they're a more volatile category of investing. But Visa is just right in there, right? Always getting a cut. Great long-term stock through there. Or I'm a subscriber to, Microsoft 365. So I'm not betting on Microsoft's AI as much as It's a really cheap service and it's done a great job for me. As well as I put a list together of like companies I'm interested in, Art Public, Canva. Wow, what a great product that is. Or this is a Viore shirt. If they come public, I'm interested. So the ideas are really close to all of us. It's whether we get a chance to play some chips and maybe find a good time, after a crisis to do it. Steve Els from Chipotle, he shined me a long time ago. I was trying to get him as a client. I sent him a burrito in a wrapper and an invite and all. But he started that in my backyard in Denver, right? At DU. So here these things do happen right in front of us. And I love the burritos. So I'd just say pay attention, have your own account to test out some ideas on money that you can risk, and then, communicate with that advisor that you shouldn't pay too much. I was a flat fee advisory, those got to be 1% or less. And feel free to explore the platforms, Schwab, Fidelity, all these have some like robo advisory where you can put your risk profiles in there and get some help.
Mm. Switching gears a little bit. And hey, look, you're out here and you're out there in Aspen. Okay, we're in these we got guys in here in all metropolitan cities doing all sorts of things. Why do you think we see so many successful men end up financially stressed despite having high incomes? This is like this is the midlife male
Yeah.
conundrum we see so much of. It's like the how to go broke on a half million a year, kind of thing. Like, what's your take?
I have a friend also named Ron, a newer friend, and he said, "Hey, do you want to see my?" He goes, "Do you have a tattoo?" I said, "Well, not yet. At the time, I didn't. I do now." He had a He's a venture capitalist, and he had a tattoo on his ankle that just said "enough." And I knew we'd be close, immediate friends after that. And so, figuring out where your enough is, so that you don't feel left out. I mean, I don't live in Aspen. I'm here at the library. I don't need a $30 million mansion. Maintenance is stupid on it. I don't need an airplane. Right? These are important decisions. And I would be actually just fine living in a trailer. And so if we could kind of train ourselves of, I don't need all that so that I can continue to invest in my future. It is hard to not let your lifestyle creep. And who we marry is that Jesus, the most important decision. I have friends that their wives are very frugal. My wife's not frugal. I have to rein her in. And then that relates to kids and all of it. And, I only hope that we could demonstrate some sacrifices. At this very moment, I need a new roof. And my home that's 15 years old has some shingles and metal. It's expensive. So how can I say, hey, guess what? We need to make a choice here. We're going to spend some money on a new roof, and that means we might not take these other trips. That's the lesson I have to teach them, because otherwise they'll always overspend. So, who your friends are, it's, you want to be skinny or you want to be, retired, be around people that know how to save. And yeah, Aspen's ridiculous right now for dinner. I have friends literally moving away because it's $400 for two people to go to dinner. And it just, it's because the cost of rent and all that. So yeah, balance it out, lifestyle, what's important, but those sayings of when the best days when someone has a boat, when they buy it and the day they sell it.
You talked about earlier the return on investments, real estate versus stocks, and kind of the percentages and how real estate is an expense and it's not or an investment. And now you talk about your own experience, the roof and everything.
Yeah.
Rent or own. It used to be, or maybe it still is, the American dream is home ownership. Everyone's got to own a home. I'm not so sure about this necessarily anymore. We've talked about this a little bit
Yeah.
online on there. What do you think? Meaning, hey, if I could free up liquidity or capital, put it in the market, put it in other places where money can make money, get some more shots on goal, so to speak, not have the ownership. Yeah, what do you think? I'll stop talking and let you talk.
No, it's personal preference, and it depends where you live. If you could sell a over high priced Aspen home and go rent the rest of your life somewhere else, but you had to leave Aspen. Yeah, and maybe the answer is own your reasonable priced home and rent your vacation home. I just heard so much in my, wealth management business of the white people problems of having, issues with their second and third homes or toys. I don't want those type of headaches going on. I'll take care of my own home and have the safety and security that I can stay there. But I'm not, thinking it's going to go up much more from now. It's just not the thesis. But I have an investment portfolio. So it's just prioritizing. I mean, if we want to retire and have some comfort, then we have to have capital and we have to have skin in the game or make that real estate decision because real estate's been such a great saving vehicle for most Americans, having taken out the mortgage, paying off the mortgage, and then owning it completely. But then you have the decision, what do? How do you monetize that, right? Reverse mortgages, not for me. So yeah, I know you got a hardworking group here. Work hard, save hard, budget, and make sure you get that money into your accounts, whether it's through a financial advisor or do it yourself. It's never been easier to do research and do it yourself. And there is a real kind of pride because your financial advisor can make a mistake. Okay? They can get scared too. And think of those charts. Microsoft was dead money for 10 years. And if they're competing, trying to beat an index, then they do the little dance, they do window dressing, especially if it's an incentivized type fund. So just imagine knowing that you've made a few picks, and we all have friends that workplaces that tell us things. You're great, Greg, you're a great interviewee and you ask good questions. You hear things and you will continue to hear things, and then you use your filter of common sense to make a decision. So as we proceed in our lives, we all got that friend that's working somewhere that, we admire. And you might get, we had this definition of inside information of which, gets a little tricky. In old school Wall Street, you could really learn some things. Today's Wall Street, there's a lot of people running around under the sphere of compliance, criticism. But people would tell you things, especially if you went to meet them face to face. And then if you spent more time than just ask the same 10 questions that the last 3 Wall Street analysts came in there. Conviction means everything. When someone says, look, son, they used to, because I looked young, son, you just can't see what's going on here. I remember the famous investor, CEO of Warner Communications, Stephen Ross. I had asked the question and he told me an answer. He's like, you're not listening, son. I own 1 million shares of that preferred stock. It's going to be fine. So, go through life armed and dangerous that I have this term I call greedy curiosity. I have greedy curiosity for opportunity. I try and train myself to be a detective of opportunity. I've trained my kids to look at labels. So my one son and I love hot sauce. We're like, well, who makes that Cholula? And who's behind that? So you can find companies that are in your life more easily if you read the labels. And I know you're involved with a lot of companies, but you got bright guys in this group, Greg. Congratulations. And, not that we want to be putting stock tips out there, but we each are going to have it if we can pay attention to the opportunity and listen to what people are saying. Let's answer one quick question.
Yeah, I saw one there too, and I want to move into some estate planning stuff, but I want to answer Chad's question here. Key tax strategies or tips: stay or get out of California. Okay, so that's a loaded one there too. But
yeah, real quick, 14 to 17 is the age of the finance camp. Colorado, but I'll consider any superstars. Yeah, I interviewed a kid from Texas last year. Estate planning, I just start here. It's worth the money. The private charitable foundation I run was from a gentleman that did not spend $5,000 on an estate plan, and it cost him over millions of dollars. We've been trying to rework that. So I've redone my plan twice, and I think of it as a work in progress. Find a good lawyer that can really help you with your own. I also think of my children and generational skipping. I don't want to over gift them and save some for later. And California is tough. I've had clients that were moving away, especially when what was that, 1.5% wealth tax that they were going to put on um, your values, that are fluctuating. They weren't like of realized gains. These were just of your total net worth. Just frightening that they would consider doing that. Um, was there a second part of that on that question,
Well, there
California
was
estate
there
planning?
was tax strategies and everything, and then I wanted to go a little bit deeper into some of the estate planning questions that I had for you because I think that's another big area where where we're at again. Again, my father was 47 when he passed away. We've discussed that. We get a lot of guys that are out there chasing salary, title, kind of spending what they're earning, so on and so forth in there. And not taking the steps again, whether that's a will, whether that's life insurance, whether that's disability. I'd love kind of your breakdown of what estate planning really looks like. And I even know from guys that say, look, these are guys that make a lot of money and quite frankly should have a lot of money or somewhere. Maybe they don't have as much saved or invested as they should. But you hear the word estate and you think that's only for super wealthy people.
Yeah. I mean, we have a maritable trust so that we can take advantage. You want to make sure you're taking advantage of the exemptions, which are so generous right now. I use municipal bonds for tax exemption. I think that's one of the greatest vehicles for my bond allocation. And to your California partner there, definitely California municipal bonds are very attractive, especially right now, given what's happened on the long end of the curve and a lot of supply there. Um, I'm not much, and I have many friends, and I have managed some offshore money. I've been to vaults in Switzerland where people store gold. Um, I'm more of keep it simple. I've been battling the IRS on this estate, where they keep losing returns, even though they've been filed multiple times electronically. So I just don't trust the IRS. And I have been audited twice. My wife and I went through surrogacy to have our children. And so, I once my medical expenses were up, so you have to prove things. I just don't want any trouble with the IRS. And one of my other mentors is like, be thankful you live in America, pay your taxes, and shut the F up, Ron. So tax avoidance strategies, not so much that when they get really complicated. I trade actively in my IRAs so that I don't generate a lot of capital gains out of my non-IRA accounts through there. And the 529s and been, filling up my wife's IRA as well. But, a great tax attorney is someone you need to have on your side. Yeah. Let's start with this one. Recommend the movie to all of your listeners, The Ultimate Gift. It's a great movie about generational wealth and dysfunctional families. And it's actually a very touching movie through there. There's not enough good movies on how to do this. Um, my children, I made a specific decision. Our family's children's trust will match the income once they're adults if we were departed early. That we will not,
Explain this. Yeah.
yeah,
Explain this.
that
What do you mean
we
by
will
that?
match their tax return, their adjusted gross income, the family trust will match so that if they wanted to be a public servant, school teacher, make 50,000, then the trust would match at 50,000. They could buy a better house, have a better life. Yeah, but if they did decide to become a surf instructor in Hawaii and make much less after us putting them through college, then we'd be glad to match that. And maybe some carve outs for, yeah, if they were stay-at-home parent type. But I have heard so much personal experience from ultra wealthy people that regret giving their children too much of an um, trust fund recipients, that reduces their motivation. I think the greatest thing is to have motivation and earn your own way in life. So we just are adamant about not doing that. Many friends that gave their kids $1 million when they turned 21 and said, you're never going to see another dime. There's no right way, wrong way to do it, but a great tax attorney can help you come up with unique ideas.
Hmm. What about life insurance as an investment vehicle?
Oh, it's a long topic. My college roommate was a life insurance salesman for Northwestern. I took the test. I didn't pass. I opened up a, whole life policy. I had it for many years. Figuring out the math and the commission is just so frustrating. It never grew as much. I know there's better vehicles, but I have no life insurance because I can't get enough for what I would want, and it's damn expensive. But obviously, if you had three kids and a different net worth, then life insurance could be very helpful. And depending on your age, I'm 60. So life insurance is getting expensive when I don't need a smaller increment without it being incredibly expensive. So
Mm.
I'm mixed, but there might be some of those policies where you can direct it more into the market investments with downside protection. But yeah, the commissions on life insurance policies have just never made sense to me. The hidden commissions, I would say.
So I want to bring it back around with the time that we have left. Uh, if your kids are older and you're older and you have not started those 529s and you haven't gotten it, is it too late to start?
Kids are older, meaning college
Meaning,
ready?
look, your kids could be 15, 16, 20, even, you know, or even the IRAs in there. So one thing is there a point where it's too late to start the 529s? I guess is one thing. And then you should be looking at how early you could start the IRAs, or is there any, or is today the best day you could do it? If you haven't done it, today's the day to start.
Today's the day on the Roth, as long as you follow the rules of how you fund it. And you can get really creative. I was thinking of hiring my friend's kid to do something for me so that they have a tracker, and then he would hire my kids to do something just to kind of create the requirement. So your question, let's say if your kids are 15 or 16, the 529 is not going to be as helpful, but it also could be used for graduate school. It's just not all undergraduate. So you might still have 10 years because there's no limit on when you could go to graduate school. And
Okay.
I know that you can take it out for other reasons. But I think of it this way, Greg, if you get the right vehicle and create the right attitude, I mean, I just can't believe that my 12-year-old boys know what a Roth IRA is. And we use Greenlight as a system of putting money on their debit cards for their chores. And this morning, my son said, "Hey, Dad, I want to move money out of my savings account into my investment account." I'm like, "Yeah, we're going to do that." So I created this or coined this term, the golden zone. And I think the 15 to 17, 14 to 17 is this golden era for kids because we can start teaching them about money. And the college is a little further off, and even the car is not quite there because some of the kids in the finance camp, it's their money now. They could redeem it and put a down payment on a car, a bike, or something, phone. But if I do my job, then have instructed them that like the winner of the camp, first camp, Imogene Mallory, right? She had 1,500 at the end of the camp, and then she won a $5,000 prize, right? So now she's 6,500. It's probably worth 7,500. That is over $500,000 for her future. Now it's going to be very tempting for her to use the 7,500, but the chance of her being a millionaire with a few little additions is incredible. She comes from a hardworking family. I hope they remember it. That it's that early start that's just so powerful.
So are there fail safes and other things that you can put in place to ensure those impulses don't get the better of our kids
Yeah,
and us, maybe
you
too?
go in front of an accountant, don't tell them about it. Yeah. I mean, there's things that many family strategies have used of not letting them know that you've put some money away. Yeah. But I mean, we want to raise intelligent, good decision-making young men and women. And I believe that we have a relationship with money. So let's go back to where we started. I came from a really dysfunctional relationship with money. My mother, who's 89, cannot spend $100 without worry. That was the limit in her mind. If she was going to spend over $100, she had to talk to my dad for her life. Like such handicapped through this. So if we start early and have money in kids' hands and try and encourage them, like, hey, what are good uses? What are bad? Don't, spend some, save some. Then they get a chance to develop their own relationship with money and maybe some of the skills of how to create wealth. Because we all know, uh, the lottery winners and the sports athletes, they end up bankrupt. It's because they weren't trained. Pharrell Williams said it well once. He's like, you got to get on the right side of money. If you don't know money, money will owe you. If you don't know
Mm.
money, money will owe you, own you.
So
So
you would go on. I wanted you to finish.
no, that's the motivation is to, let them feel it. Let them see what it's like. Let them lose money, right? When I invested in my first stock, which was Max and Irma's restaurant back in the day, when I made money on it, Mr. Bailey, the founder of Janus, like, well, that's too bad. I thought you're going to learn a real lesson. So paying tuition in the markets is also helpful. Start early, figure out why it worked or didn't work when the stakes aren't as high.
So you've been transparent and you mentioned this a couple of times. Look, there are hard conversations that even you have to have with your spouse, sometimes your partner in there. We've discussed this too. I have a wife who likes to spend money. Okay, like a lot of us do. We hear these a lot of complaints sometimes, and I'm not a misery loves company guy or avoidance of any of that stuff, nor am I using any of those things as an excuse. However, how do you approach if you would share a little bit, how do you approach the harder conversations? You're sophisticated with finances and with money. I will say that I'm not over there. I certainly don't manage money for a living, have a real track record in that. So sometimes it's even harder to have a conversation around finances or where limits and lines are, because the truth of the matter is I'm not an expert either, on this. So I'm just asking, man to man, friend to friend, how do you approach the difficult conversations around finances?
I was going to show you how right here.
Oh, good. Here you go.
Okay. On a
We do
text,
it by text, is what we're saying?
no, it
Like
says
we should keep our distance?
from Monarch Money, your gifts and budget update. You've exceeded your gift budget by $507. Not me. So I would say let data be the level playing field, because I know I've done it, having an Excel spreadsheet and someone's doing all the work and then like, hey, honey, we're over here. And if you say that on the wrong time of the day or the week, it doesn't go well. And you don't dare want to talk about it on date night or you'll never get laid. So.
These are all true, and true. I'm
Right.
asking because like I came into the conversation in a similar place where we're looking to do something, and the estimate was, the budget was one thing, the estimate was higher. Then even the negotiation between the budget and the estimate still came in over. It goes, okay, well, how would you like to proceed here?
Yeah.
Like, how
So,
strict are we with these things?
work in progress. Here's one idea. Third week of the month. So if you're using one of these budget trackers and you make it to the third week and you have your budget meeting or quick conversation where you look at the app together, say, oh, hey, yeah, we had to buy those plane tickets and so we're over. It gives you the opportunity to not do something in the last week. So whether it was the concert you wanted to go to or the extra dinner or buying something, it's information. And so I just want the information to be the bearer of bad news instead of me, someone who's like got the data. And Greg, it's really delicate because sometimes when I question an expense, it was categorized incorrectly. And so these apps do a good job, but like Venmo and Amazon are the most frustrating. I mean, Amazon's just a category in our family budget. And whether
Yeah.
it's for household items or kids' new cleats, I want kids' sports to be there. I got hockey players. I'm like, I'm curious, how much did I spend on hockey last year? Right? You want to know because these things just show up unless we have a view on them. So I would say get the app and try and have the conversation. And then, what's the lesson we all need to learn is, mine was to not let it be such a hot button, red button in my life. Because I mean, my father made my mother feel horrible. And so she really didn't spend anything because she was scared. She was frightened. Yeah, but we want to have goals. We want to set, my wife even said this the other day. She said, hey, we should start a special account that is for future travel because she wanted to take another trip like we did this summer. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting idea, is to set aside some money. So I think you just have to work all the time to make that conversation functional, not painful. And maybe over some drinks or after one drink, to get there. Um,
Well,
yeah.
one of us will be drinking in my relationship.
What's that rule about team sports? Don't talk to the coach until 24 hours after the game. You
It's
see
a good one.
you see that expense pop up on the credit card and I've done it, what the hell is this? And instead, let it reveal itself.
You've dropped a lot of knowledge and recommendations in here. You mentioned take us through them because I think what we need after this, Ron, is I need a book recommendation list, the movie rec list, and the app recs here. And you talked to
Yeah.
what is some of the ones you mentioned. One of them was Monarch. I think it was the one that you is that
Monarch Money downloads
okay?
$99 a year, incredible investment, super helpful, on the phone, automatically sets budgets based on your spending pattern. Yeah, Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel was one of the books. The Ultimate Gift is a great movie that I used to give to clients when I could send them CDs.
And guys, we'll transcribe all of this. So we'll pull all the recommendations and everything that Ron talked about, and we'll get that into the newsletter. We'll get that onto the app. We'll get it up on YouTube everywhere so that that list of recs will come out. What was Greenlight also?
Oh, Greenlight's an app we use for our kids where they have these debit cards. They can even be tracked if you want them to, but their allowance based on their chores automatically goes onto their debit card with an allocation for spending, saving, and giving. I thought that was pretty good to kind of segregate. It's kind of like the Rich Dad Poor Dad ideas of having different envelopes, different buckets for your money. But yeah, it's great because when they go buy something like on Roblox. So watch this. My kids love Roblox, like many kids do. So what stock do they own? Roblox. It's been working. So at least they see the connection. I hate spending money on Roblox, seeing them spend money on Roblox, but if they're gonna, I say this in the finance camp, if you're gonna spend money with a company, don't let them have all the fun. Get in the game and share in the prosperity through there. So,
Mm.
that who knows? There's great kid computer programmers out there that started in those environments. So, yeah, I don't want to be too judgmental of anything my kids do. I want to be really open-minded. And we are talking about, hey, look how much these AI programmers are making right now.
Yep. Great tips, guys. I want to open it up to questions in the last few minutes we have. If anybody's got questions for Ron, if you want to turn your cameras on or your mics off and ask, feel free. Now is a great time to do that. And I will still get you out before football practice pickup as well,
Good.
Ron, because this is great.
What is W Health Advisors? Who's that?
Oh, that's Dennis.
Okay.
That is wealth and health combined. He sent me a great hat too. Okay,
Nice.
down there. Dennis is a money guy. I think you're based in Jersey. Is that right, Dennis? We met in person in Colorado and Denver at an Eric Hinman event, Founders Club event. It's there, and it's good to have him on here as well. So, so might need a wealth hat yourself, Ron. Also,
Yeah.
there.
We're
Yes.
all into longevity and all that. I'm wearing the whip here and private company, but I've been poking around on it a little bit. And yeah, I think it's interesting. I met Brad Feld, that was the early investor in Fitbit last week, and he loves it. And then I go talk to another friend of mine. He's like, Ron, Apple could crush him in a heartbeat. So varying opinions, make up our own mind someday. And if that was to come public, I like the monthly revenue, annual subscription model of it and all the data. And one last thing is I think when Whoop, I'm on the wait list for Whoop Labs.
Mm-hmm.
So I can
Yep.
combine my blood work with my activity and sleep and recovery. That could be an interesting combination.
It so that raises another point. Private investment opportunities.
Yep.
We see a lot of them, on there. That excitement of getting on a cap table, brands that you like. Now I'm seeing a lot of even brands and companies do crowdfunding type things like that. Uh, that type versus looking at a Canva, looking at a Whoop, looking and saying, okay, I'm tracking them, I'm following these companies, but what I'm really waiting for is the public offering, ideally.
Yeah. You mixed, you probably have subscribers that are great VCs, and depending on when they started and where they went, they could have had great experiences, as Brad did. Yeah, Brad actually doesn't invest in the public markets. He's only privates. He doesn't want to look at it. I thought that was interesting. We're just different in that way. Yeah, I've had mixed experience. I've been a member of some of the funds through JP Morgan, yeah, that have done, index plus or minus, and then I've done some individual deals that didn't work out. Yeah, I'm more of trying to simplify. I don't want a bunch of K1s is really part of it. I used to have some MLP investments. So, yeah, you know, there may be one that's special. Those, you know, you got to take a shot on goal, but um, unless you have some keen insight, um, and maybe the idea of a venture capitalist is that you might want to take 10 or 20 shots to get one or two that work. I was more limited in my shots on goal in VC because I just appreciated the liquidity that I had in the public markets and could take advantage of public, you know, anxiety at different times in the market to pick up something that was far more transparent. You know, I don't know how many Whoop subscribers there are. I'd like to know. It helped me formulate them a little bit. I think the company's got a $4 billion valuation, and I think they're in and around 1 million or less subscribers. So that's pretty pricey per subscriber, but who knows what the future holds with them. I just would like to learn more, and it's tougher in the VC world from the outside.
Or you've got guys like me who might have multiple subscriptions because then you go from the 4 to the 5, then you get the family one, then you take it off for 6 months and you keep paying for the subscription. You know, all of those mistakes that you should not make. And I question whether I should be tracking all of this stuff at all. You know, you get into all of the all of these different things. But as a company, they're certainly doing certainly getting a lot of exposure. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yes.
I've seen some competition with the Whom band that came out on the broadcast on the streamers lately. Um, and supposedly Whoop's not going to the ring because the measurement off that finger is not as good as on the
And
wrist.
that's been the Whoop Aura debate for a while right now between the ring and between the strap and then between does anybody really need this? You know, at which point are we majoring in the minors and these things like you talked about what owns you? You know, at a certain point, sometimes there's a feeling that sometimes these things own you. Like I feel great today, but it's telling me I shouldn't. So then all of a sudden I don't feel so good, you know, or I feel that
Interesting. Yeah.
like there's all of these things that are going on there and we're diverting, but it's like now it's even doing blood pressure, but it's not really kind of doing blood pressure. So there's all kinds of things you can, again, back to your risk tolerance in anything. What creates stress? What creates anxiety? What makes you feel good? I think that's what all of this is about is doing things that you feel uncomfortable with, but then also figuring out where those areas are that you might be able to get a little bit uncomfortable, take some other risk, get those shots on goal like you're talking about build on a solid foundation, but have an allocation of, hey, here's some things that could be life changing, could be really different for me.
Yeah. I mean, I had an old client that she just was a great risk taker and she put a few chips out there and it took years to come back. And every now and then she's like, oh, yeah, I invested in this and now I've got $1 million out of it. I'm like, how much did you invest? Oh, 20 grand. Oh my God. Wow. Good for you. Knew nothing about it. But she had, you know, some available cash and that was a chip that she could spend through there.
Yep.
Maybe here's a way to kind of close it out, Greg, is say, you know, I'm 60 and I am gonna see some more volatility in my life. I'm asking myself, how am I gonna behave? You know, what did I learn over the last 40 years as an investor? And how I'm gonna behave given my age, net worth, everything set up. And so to all your subscribers is to say, yeah, you're not gonna get away with it. You don't get to, you know, walk down that final road without getting tested. So think of the real estate test that we had in the great financial crisis. Yeah, the Bitcoin test. Yeah, I was actually in Bermuda when the whole FTX thing was going down with Sam Bankman-Fried, or yeah, and I was a member of BlockFi, and so I saw this happening when that really took Bitcoin down. So yeah, maybe have your guys think about the buckets, right? Here's your real estate world. You know, do you have Airbnb rental properties in your own home, and are you speculating? Okay. And then here's the financial world, and here's the Mag 7 and the indices. At some point, there'll be a problem. And then here's the digital world over here that you're gonna get we are going to have opportunities, and they're going to be painful when they present themselves. How are we going to react human behavior wise when we watch our net worth in one of those categories get compressed? And ask ourselves, is it long? I mean, think of COVID, how quickly that changed from a downdraft to, oh no, we're sitting at home gaming and all these crazy things are happening. And then put it over in the context that we are in this incredible game of investing and speculation, and has been going on for thousands of years. Okay.
Mm.
The very first stock came out of Amsterdam called the VOC. It was the highest priced company in the world, and it financed, exploring ships all over the Dutch traders. That's where we start the finance campus, understand where markets were made and where Wall Street came from, New Amsterdam. So this is going to happen. And what's your part? And you can't be an expert in every part. So pick your spot and then go deep and make some friends in that area. And I'll leave you with this last thing. Second level thinking. We have to assume if I go look at any company that a lot of people know everything that I know. So what am I going to add to that? So I have to make an extra effort to get here, and I have to ask a lot of questions and I have to do some reading to gain enough conviction so that I can handle volatility.
Mm.
I like really simple stories.
Well, that is one of our mantras, as you know, keep it simple at
Yeah.
Midlife Mail. The basics work. Simple is hard enough, for sure.
Yeah, right.
So, Ron Speaker, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all of your time setting up shop in the library so that you can be able to do this and then still get to your kids. All your contributions each week that we get to share, your generosity. So, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. This has been great. And, we'll continue to pick your brain, man. We absolutely will.
Got plenty to do. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Got it. Take care. Thank you very much, guys. All right. I will see everybody for our next calls. I know we've got Bart Foster coming up. We've got the middle newsletter going out tonight, every Sunday in your inboxes. So check the app, check Instagram, check our website for everything that we are doing. Ron, thank you so much. Guys, I appreciate all of you being here. Thank you so much. Take care.